On today's episode, Wizards play-by-play broadcaster Chris Miller breaks down what's been an eventful offseason, capped off here by the Summer League, which recently came to an end. Stay tuned for it here on Locked On Wizards.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
DC family, this is Locked On Wizards, where you're part of our family. We thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen each and every single day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day, alongside DC Sports content creating savant and credentialed media member for the Washington Wizards. That's Abdullah Ayyubi. Check him out on Instagram at the DNB Sports Zone page. I'm Ben Strober, and I cover all things DC Sports for 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. You can check me out on Twitter at Ben Strober Media. And today, we are honored to be joined by an iconic voice for Wizards fans. Chris Miller, the current TV play-by-play voice of the Washington Wizards, joins us today. Check him out on Twitter at CMillsPXP. Chris, thanks for hopping on the pod today. How's the offseason been treating you, man?
It's been great. Just got back from Vegas a couple of days ago, and now I'm in a undisclosed location where the beaches are warm and the drinks are cold. So I told Abdullah we would hook up, and here we are. It's an honor for me to be on with you guys, and it's just kind of a small world how we all kind of know each other through basketball. Ben, you were telling me before, you play with my son Donovan, so this is kind of crazy. It's kind of like a full circle moment. So glad to be with you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time to come out here with us. Well, one thing that's been consistent, I know it's the off season. You're out here on vacation right now. You were just in Vegas for the Summer League. One thing that's been a consistent thing is that General Manager Will Dawkins has certainly kept us on our toes throughout this offseason. A bunch of moves have been made. But before we get into some of that stuff, overall, you were out there covering the Summer League in Vegas. What was your overall impression on how the team performed and some of the young guys that got a chance to showcase themselves?
Yeah, first and foremost, everyone got out of there unscathed. There was no injuries, and that was kind of my main focus, kind of going in, covering summer leagues for as long as I have. The last thing you want is one of your young players to go down with an injury. Unfortunately, we saw Derek Queen, the guy from Baltimore, go down with an injury. You just hate seeing stuff like that. So for the Wizards, it was just great to see the young players kind of get their toes wet a little bit in the NBA and get out of there healthy, so now they can enjoy kind of August and get themselves prepared for after Labor Day, getting back into camp and starting to ramp up for the season.
And not too long ago, Chris, the Wizards traded for a familiar face of the DMV, Cam Whitmore. So we were really excited about that because there was so much talk about Jonathan Kuminga potentially being here in DC, but out of nowhere, Will Dawkins sends 2 second-round picks to Houston. So our question is, how does the addition of Cam Whitmore impact what the Wizards do rotationally?
Twofold, Abdul. I'll start with Cam. This is an unbelievable opportunity to come close to home. He's not home. We know the difference between Baltimore and the DMV, but it's close to home. And it's a chance for him to reconnect with Bub Carrington. They played with each other on the AAU circuit. They played for Carmelo Anthony's AAU team, and it's just kind of one of those full circle moments. And it's his second chance to kind of prove his worth in the league. And, you know, it was really a low deal when you think about it, only giving up 2 second-round picks to acquire, I think, a really good talent. A kid that was once a 5-star athlete, somebody that played for Team USA. I think he has great size. I actually there were only 2 players in that draft. That was the Wemby draft where I was like, man, I really like these 2 kids. And it was literally Bilal Coulibaly and Cam Whitmore. And now they're both teammates, which really goes to Will Dawkins and the scouting staff of really keeping an eye on people. Even though they don't acquire them during the draft, they still kept an eye on what he was doing in Houston the previous 2 years. And I think it's a plug-and-play situation for him. It's also an opportunity for him to compete for some minutes. And I think Brian Keefe's job, obviously, is to develop the young players, and Cam is just another one of those. And I think he'll get an opportunity to at least have a landing space to kind of show people what he's all about.
You know, real quick follow-up with that. You mentioned how it's going to be a super competitive environment going into camp before the season. Your impressions from when you were down there covering the team, what did the competition look like if you were able to check out some of the practices? What was that like?
Super competitive, and that's the way you want it when you've got young players. And I think, Ben, if if this stat is still correct, because as you said, things are kind of moving fluently with the Wizards. I think they have 12 players ranging in age from 19 to 24. And in my 30 years of covering the league, and this being my 19th season with the Wizards, I've never seen anything like this before. This is like an ultra youth movement that we're seeing, and it's a good thing too. You know, you're going to just take as many bites of the apple as possible if you're the Wizards front office to see if any of these young players can stick long term. And with all of us knowing what the agenda is for this season is to acquire the young players and let them go out there, roll the ball out, and see which ones want it. I think that's the reason why you get another guy like Cam Whitmore to come in here and compete with the other wings. A guy like Keyshawn George, who I think has taken leaps and bounds in his development. We can talk about that later. But again, it's Brian Keefe kind of saying, okay, who wants to play, go earn it.
The youth movement, which has grown stronger and stronger as this offseason has gone on, maybe got one of its more pivotal pieces going forward here in the draft at number 6 overall. Trey Johnson, a guy we've heard nothing but fierce competitor, a guy that works his tail off to get to where he is and what he's been able to bring to the table in his short time with the organization. What has stuck out to you about, one, his performance in the Summer League and then just his off-the-court tendencies that we've seen so far?
You know, it's really rare when you've got someone as young as Trey thinking about defense and trying to at least show that he can play defense at this level. And I really thought in those 2 games, he really gave effort on that end. We already know he can score. The one thing that really surprised me offensively about him, and this is why I don't really get bogged down in pre-draft analysis, because you just don't know until they get to your city and to your program how they play. But the one thing that really stood out to me was he can actually put the ball on the deck and get his shot off and get into the lane. One of the criticisms about his game was at Texas is he had trouble kind of getting into the paint. I didn't see that in Vegas. In fact, I saw some improvement from one game to another. And his efficiency. That second game against Brooklyn, guys, I literally looked up at the scoreboard and went, wait, he's got 21 points? I mean, it was the most efficient, quick, fast, and in a hurry 21 I've seen in the Summer League. So those are kind of 2 improvements you saw right away from him. And I think you said it best, Ben. He is a hard worker. His father told me during the draft press conference the day after the draft that he is always in the gym. And you can just kind of tell just in the small time I've been around him, like he works. And that just fits with what Michael Winger and Will Dawkins and the scouting department and the coaching staff are all looking for with these Wizards players. There's an identity now for this team moving forward. And you got to be a two-way player. You have to be committed to the game. And basketball has to be first and foremost in your mind. And I think they got that with Trey Johnson.
And speaking of another guy, Chris, Will Riley, a guy who a lot of people were questioning of that second first-round pick because the idea of drafting a big man was such a big thing going into the draft. What were you most impressed about him in the Summer League?
He just blends in, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing when you can just blend your offense, blend your defense, and just be a player that can be counted on. 2 things with Will. Draft night, I had a chance to talk to his head coach at the University of Illinois, Brad Underwood, and he said – Will is the second best tough shot maker he's ever coached in his coaching career. And the first one was Michael Beasley when he was an assistant coach at Kansas State. And as you know, Beasley won National Player of the Year his 1 year in Manhattan, Kansas. So that's really high praise when a coach like that has been around a lot of players to talk about Will being a really good tough shot maker, not taker. There's a difference between taking tough shots and making them. And the other thing that stood out to me is Will is a multi-sport athlete. He played soccer as a kid, and his dad was a track coach, and he was a high jumper. So you think about how soccer and high jumping can help you with basketball. Great footwork and his ability to get off the wood and dunk a basketball. So for me, he's a very intriguing prospect. I think a lot of the stuff coming into the draft was, can he be a better defender? So that's, I think, what he's going to be working on in his first year. But again, another intriguing prospect that's going to get an opportunity.
Everybody, we're joined by Chris Miller today. Let's take a quick timeout. When we come back, some more from our guy Chris Miller here on what the Wizards have done this offseason. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, and you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. One thing for me, right when I got out of school, I figured out with Monarch Money that I was spending insane amounts of money going out to eat, not budgeting the way I grocery shop. That's all changed thanks to downloading Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code WNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Alongside Chris Miller and Abdul Ayyubi, I'm Ben Strober. Thanks for sticking with us here on Locked On Wizards, a special edition today here on this Tuesday post-Summer League. We have already got to hear some of the impressions from our guy Chris here, play-by-play voice of the Washington Wizards on television. One thing that stuck out to me was Jir Watkins, the second-round pick out of Florida State, who was just an absolute force defensively throughout the Summer League. His 4 steals per game led the entire Summer League, tied at the top there with Keyshawn George, who only played in 2 games for this Summer League. But Watkins, a guy, we saw him take such a high volume of 3-point attempts throughout the Summer League. I know the last game, not as efficient at 4 of 11 from the field, but what do you kind of see his role looking like for this Wizards team? I know he's on the 2-way contract, so there's that 50-game cap I think he's allowed to play in the regular season. But how do you see them utilizing him here in year number 1?
I was kind of glad that they took a flyer on somebody that was 24 years old. Mostly, you think about these drafts guys, they're taking these 19, 20-year-old kids and trying to develop them. One thing about Jir that I really like is what his calling card is. His calling card is defense. He's going to lock in. Ben, you talked about the steals. I think he had 16 stocks, which is steals and blocks combined in the last 2 games, and really is a force on that end. And you know what you're going to get with him. Defensively, it's going to be his calling card, getting into the passing lanes. His on-ball defense is really good. And Ben, I actually like the fact that he took a lot of threes in the Summer League, because this is an opportunity for you to work on your game in a setting where you're being evaluated. So another one of these kids that I think works is going to stay in the gym, and the 2-way opportunity is for him to get a lot of playing time with the go-go. And then once he gets his number called up to the big club, hopefully he'll be able to get in there and get some minutes for Brian Keith.
Yeah, well, we're very high on Jir Watkins. I think with this 7-foot wingspan at 6'5" is just insane. And I think a guy who can pick up 94 feet is just something that we need here in Washington, which brings me up to my next question, Chris. The latter quarter of the season, we saw the team look way more competitive than it had been in a long time. How do you believe that they can build on that this upcoming year?
I don't really subscribe to carryover from one year to another, because personnel changes, philosophies change, potentially maybe schematics change. But I think for the young players getting the opportunity to get those minutes last year down the stretch, playing competitive games, I do think that could be a potential carryover. And I think of a guy like Bub Carrington. Guys, I have so much respect for him and what he did last year, playing all 82 games. I think there were only 7 players in the entire NBA that played all 82. And for him to do that his rookie year, and obviously going through what he went through towards the end of the season with his father passing, and for him to do that and then to hit the game-winning shot last game of the year at Miami, I think there could be some carryover for Bub. And I think now with the team moving on from a Jordan Poole and Marcus Smart like that, I think the ball is going to be in Bub's hand a lot more. And for him, I'm really excited about what year 2 can look like. But here's the key about the NBA. All 29 teams are going to be looking at Bub Carrington a whole hell of a lot different now, because now they know there's a kid that can compete at a high level and he's durable. So I think what we saw Abdullah last year was these young players aren't scared of the moment. I go back to that Golden State game where they were trash talking like Draymond Green early in the year, and it caught Draymond's eye. These kids aren't scared of the moment, and I think now that they've got a year under their belt, I think great things are going to happen in terms of their development moving forward.
I feel like for a guy like Bub Carrington right now, and you mentioned how Jordan Poole kind of departs, and then you have Bub slide in as a guy who's going to be a much more ball-dominant player this year. We'll see how Trey Johnson's role also fits in that, because he looks so good with the basketball in his hands. But from what we know about Bub Carrington and what we've seen with him as a primary ball handler, just throughout a very small sample size in the Summer League, What aspects of his game do you expect him to be working on and improving upon as the season kind of goes on throughout here?
Yeah, decision making with the basketball. Every player will tell you that's something that they have to improve on, especially when you have the usage that I think Bub will have with the basketball. I think defensively, staying in front of his man, that's going to be important. I think he has the positional size to do that, being 6'4", nice wingspan. But the one thing that then I observed early and just having the luxury of being able to call every minute of every game, you notice this with Bub, is his IQ. I think that was top of mind for me early on in the season, and it just carried over throughout his rookie year. I just think he has an awareness on the floor with his IQ that's going to help not only himself but his teammates.
With some of these veterans that have stuck around, I know we saw Marcus Smart depart from the organization 2 days ago, but still a guy that you brought in just a few weeks ago in CJ McCollum at the 2 position, and then Chris Middleton, who came over at the deadline last year. How do you see some of those veteran pieces contributing to this young core throughout the regular season here?
I see so much value in veterans that's been in the league to kind of help navigate these rookies and young players. There is value in that. But there's that balance of, yes, we want the veterans on the team, but we don't want the veterans taking up the minutes, because those minutes should be going to these young players learning how to develop and win eventually in this league sustainably. But I think a guy like CJ McCollum is going to be a plug-and-play guy. He was once the president of the Players Association, high Q player. And remember, he gave us 50 last year, so he still can play. Okay, I remember calling that game being like, wow, CJ McCollum gave us 50 points. And I think that was early in January when we were down in New Orleans. Chris Middleton is a veteran that I think are going to help the wing players like Keyshawn George. And, it was good to see Marvin Bagley come back to kind of shore up some of the depth at that center position. That it was thin for a while, but to see Bags come back. So yeah, veterans have a presence on this team, but again, I'm interested to see how Brian Keefe kind of navigates using them on the floor, but not taking up a lot of those minutes for the youngsters.
Yeah, so you transitioned the next question really well. How much pressure is on Coach Brian Keefe this upcoming season, Chris? Because like you mentioned, you have the young guys, you have vets, but you also have this expectation of not being competitive. And there's also the idea of keeping that top 8 protected pick that you had with that John Wall trade. So how much pressure is on Coach Keefe this upcoming season?
I don't know, Abdul, if I would call it pressure. I would just call it sticking with the plan. And the plan is, again, Coach Keefe is known as a development coach. Develop the young players. If he keeps doing that, I don't see there being any issues. Yeah, I don't think pressure or expectations should be labeled on this team when it comes to wins and losses. I think there's still foundation building. Don't take that from me. Will Dawkins said that at the end of the season. They're still building their house. So I kind of had to learn that the hard way. It's kind of like, oh, okay, so this is good. This is going to take a while, but patience is key. So I don't think there's any pressure at all on Brian Keefe.
You heard it right there from Chris Miller. Patience key for Wizards fandom going forward. We've been saying that on the pod the entire summer. You got another voice telling you right here. We'll take one more quick break. When we are back, we'll wrap things up here with the guy Chris Miller, play-by-play voice of the Wizards. Stick with us here on Locked On Wizards. All right. Well, we still have a little bit of time here with our guy, Chris Miller of Monumental Sports Network. About with you throughout this offseason, we had heard Michael Winger, Travis Schlenk. They've been saying, wait till you guys see what Keyshawn George has been up to this offseason. He's a guy that has stuck out the most of all the year 2 guys. And I think the proof was in the pudding, what we saw in the summer league. And albeit the second game, he struggled a bit more offensively than he did in the first. But his impact on both ends of the floor is undeniable. The 5 steals he had against Brooklyn. What do you think his leap looks like here in year number 2 in the regular season?
Man, before the first Vegas game, Ben, I went to practice, and the first thing I noticed is he's grown, and it's not his hair. It's not his hair. He's actually grown a little bit, and he's starting to fill out his body, and it's scary what his development is going to look like. I think he has taken a quantum leap. You saw it in the first game, and even though he didn't shoot the ball particularly well in that second game, Ben, what did he do? He filled up the stat sheet. He did everything out there on the floor, defending, rebounding, assisting, whatever you need. And I think that's what Keyshawn's going to be. No pun intended. He really is a Swiss Army knife. I mean, I think he's going to be able to do anything you want out there. And the one thing that surprised me last year calling his games is with his size, he can be a secondary playmaker. I mean, he can make plays. He can run a pick and roll. So he can do whatever the coach really needs him, kind of guard 1 through 5. We even saw him guarding Malawach during that summer league game, and that was one thing that stuck out. I made sure I wrote that down. Is like Malawach is 7'2", and you're seeing Keyshawn down there on the block really being physical with him. So he's one of those guys, Ben, on any given night, you might need him to defend the best perimeter player. The next night he might have to rebound. One night he's got to facilitate. I think he's going to be able to do a lot of things in his second season.
Speaking of another year two guy, Chris, Alex Sarr, the French kid, I'm really high on him. The fact that he was getting criticized so much after a couple of summer league games going into his rookie year to where he is now, breaking the block record in summer league with 8 blocks. I mean, Chris, that's got to mean something. It sucks because a lot of people out there will criticize him if he plays bad in summer league, but when you see a performance like that, they'll say, oh, it's just summer league. So what are your expectations for the French kid going to year two?
Well, I think there's a lot of expectations on him because he was the second overall pick. And, listen, Zachary Richache, he struggled. He was the first overall pick. I kind of laugh about summer league expectations because it's like I look at it like summer school. Like you're going there to kind of just learn, figure things out. Shout out to Charlotte for winning the summer league championship. But, I mean, what is that really, right? Like you want your kids to, 1, stay healthy, and 2, just go out there and compete. That's the real key of Vegas Summer League. But for Alex Sarr, look, he had moments in his rookie year where you're like, oh, there's some flashes right there. I always go back to the game in Denver when he gave Jokic 34 points. I'm like, listen, Jokic really was allergic to defense that night, but you take advantage of the opportunity, right? That's in front of you. And I thought Alex was really good that night. He had a lot of those moments. And then to have that 8-block game in Vegas, I mean, the only thing that can come out of that is confidence for him, right? He's a stretch 5, so he's going to shoot threes. He's going to block shots. I know this. The metrics will tell you when he was out there on the floor last year, the Wizards were a better defensive team. So to me, that's an upside for him going into his second year.
One thing I've picked up with Alex Sarr's game, and it's very evident. It's not a secret that there's still a work in progress that it needs to be made with him in terms of being a rebounder for this team. I know he's a guy that stretches the floor. Sometimes offensively, you'll find him in a possession where he's taken a long three, made over 100 threes for this team. So if he is shooting the three, you're not going to have him down there rebounding. Is there anything you see from his game that sticks out as maybe you could see him making an improvement, an adjustment perhaps to help his rebounding numbers go up here in year number 2 a little bit?
And I'm blessed every night to be with a guy next to me that made his money and provided for his family by rebounding. So I get a chance to, tap in with Drew always when we're talking about rebounding, and that's just a want to. I know the game has changed where, like you said, Alex hit over 100 threes, and that's going to kind of take you away from the rim. But, that's a want-to thing. You can talk technique, you can talk all that you want, but you just have to have the fire and desire to go get the basketball. And that's something that I kind of learn from Drew every night. So I think that's going to be an improvement for Alex. He just has an upside to be a really good 5-man. But I think everybody needs to rebound on the team. You can't just be the center. A lot of times last year we saw guards rebounding from the corners. That was something new that we noticed in the league. So it's not just Alex, it's everybody that has to get on that backboard.
Going back to Trey Johnson, Chris, for me and even Ben, we talked about the idea of him being a candidate for Rookie of the Year. I think the situation that he's in compared to the other guys that he's compared to in the class, it's a real possibility. So do you think it's too much of a stretch to say he should be a Rookie of the Year finalist at least the idea of him being a guy who you go up against Cooper Flagg, who, I mean, that situation in Dallas is a lot different here in Washington, but Trey Johnson is a baller, and we saw that. I always go back to the whole throwing the ball off Kamamala, watch his leg in his first summer league game. I mean, that's just cold.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably sound like a homer, but I feel like he has a better chance than most to win Rookie of the Year because I think of the opportunities that's out there on the floor. I just don't know what the metrics look like for Rookie of the Year. Like, I would ask you guys, like, what are the numbers? What do they have to look like for him to be in consideration for that? Because, like you said, with Cooper being in Dallas, listen, they're trying to win a championship, and he's on a tailor-made, ready team to compete. So I'm wondering what his numbers look like compared to what Trey's numbers would look like, and what would put them over the hump. I have no idea, but I do think Trey is going to be an efficient shooter, which I think should be in consideration. I think he's going to score. I would say probably, can he get anywhere between 12 and a half to 15 a game? Can he shoot efficiently? And would that put him in consideration for Rookie of the Year? I would hope so.
Another Johnson that is a young piece for this Wizards team is A.J. Johnson. We got a much larger sample size of him throughout this summer league, who obviously came over in the Chris Middleton, Kyle Kuzma trade back in February. Does the buyout of Marcus Smart, do you think that opens up minutes for him as the team's backup point guard, or what do you expect his role to look like here?
Well, it was interesting. Will Dawkins talked about when they first acquired him in that Kyle Kuzma deal that they actually got him a year ahead of schedule last year. So everything that we saw from AJ was kind of like an added bonus. Like, he wasn't really supposed to start getting ramped up in our program until this summer. So we actually got to see AJ baseline on the rim slam his first moment in DC, which I went crazy over because I just love seeing it. But yeah, I think he's got an opportunity again, like all these kids are just going to be able to come into camp and be like, earn your spot. If you want to be the backup PG, show us. But I thought he gave some really good tape, guys, during Vegas. I mean, he had a couple of games where he took 20 shots. I like that. You might as well. If you're the best player on the Summer League team, go get the opportunities to show what you can do out there on the floor. I think his decision-making has to be better. The defense has to be better. He'll tell you all these things. This is nothing that I'm trying to break news on the Locked On Wizards podcast, but I like what we saw from him last year, and it was just a glimpse into what the future could be for him.
Talk to me about our boy TV, Tristan Vucevic, Chris. We're really high on him. Really, a second-round pick that we haven't seen a guy like him produce in a while, probably since Thomas Satoransky. What are your expectations of TV going into year 3?
Tristan has no fear. Man, I remember the first game he played for us. We were in Chicago, and first thing he did was he dove on the floor. And you saw the competitive juices from him, and I'm really high on him. There's just certain guys that I've covered throughout the years that just have kind of this, you just root for type guys, like Gortat. Like, there's just certain guys where you're just like, man, I like that dude just because of the way that they go out and they compete and they're great teammates. I think that's the one thing that's really important is when you're a really good teammate, fans and media, we see it. And I think Tristan is one of those.
All right, Chris. Well, this has been absolutely delightful to hear from one of the iconic voices here of the DC family for now going into year number 17. We are excited to hear you back on the call in a couple months as Wizards basketball finally gets underway. We thank you for making time and joining us here despite you being on vacation. And enjoy the rest of it, brother.
Much tells you how much I like you guys. I'm on vacation talking hoops with you guys. But
There we
Abdul
go.
and Ben, it's a pleasure and an honor to talk to you guys. Enjoy the off season.
One last thing, Chris. Can you tell Drew that I said hi? It was a guy that I grew up on, man, with 2014 when I first started watching the Wizards, man.
Hey, next time we do this, he and I will do it together with you, and then you can tell him yourself.
That'd be awesome.
All right, guys, respect. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody, thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen today. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Special thanks to our guy, Chris Miller, play-by-play voice of the Washington Wizards, for joining us today. That's Abdullah Ayyubi, and I'm Ben Strober. We sign off here on Locked On Wizards. Go Wiz.